Hi everyone, I'm Charlotte and I'm a speech pathologist at Chatwell Allied Health. And this is Jenny, she's our lovely counsellor. And we will be having a webinar with you now on how we can best support neurodivergent children with emotional regulation. So let's get started. We'll just pull up our slides for you. Going to take a moment. There we go. All right, so that's us. Just to give you a little bit of basis on our roles that we play in this area, because there can be a lot of overlap with different professionals and different really important people that play a part in supporting emotional regulation with children. So I guess from a speech pathologist perspective, I would be supporting the communication aspect of emotional regulation. So I would be helping to provide tools to the child to either verbally or using other means to identify and express their emotions. Also helping the communication partners, the people around that child, whether it's a parent or a teacher or someone else, in order to understand their communication style, their communication needs, and what strategies might be helpful. So the link between effective communication skills and ability to express your emotions is quite high. So that's the role that a speech pathologist might play. I might let Jenny talk to the role of a counsellor.
Yeah, we would normally, I guess, explore further into emotions, what they feel like in our bodies, and then looking at, I guess, our thoughts and what thoughts kind of the self-talk that goes along with those emotions. Yeah, and then looking at coping strategies for when I'm feeling sort of some of the challenging emotions, how I can best use strategies to kind of regulate. And yeah, definitely working with parents in this space for sure, particularly with our younger children, before they sometimes are still developing this ability. Yeah, we'll go into that a bit more.
Yeah, we'll delve into it a little bit more. So I guess it's a big overlapping area with lots of different professionals. We've got a few more listed there on the slides too. So there may be a psychologist involved who can support understanding behaviours and emotions. Occupational therapists can play an important role in understanding a child's sensory profile and their independence and abilities day to day. And developmental educators can be a really important person as well, because they can provide support in a lot of different developmental areas too. So they're the people that may be already around your child and supporting this area, or there might be people that could in the future. I guess we also want to highlight how important emotional regulation is, because it links so closely to some of these long-term things like good self-esteem, identity, health and well-being. I think to be able to support a child through their emotions is really beneficial long term. We'll keep this presentation pretty broad to all children, in terms of ages or things that can be applicable to different settings, and people that are watching from different backgrounds. But we will have contact details at the end if you do want to follow up with us or reach out for support in this area so that it's more tailored to what you need. So what I thought I might just start off doing is just explaining the term neurodivergence or being neurodivergent, because it might be new to some people that are watching. So it might just be good to clarify what we mean when we say that. So neurodiversity actually means like a group of people with lots of different types of brains. So neuro means brain and divergence means different. So all different types of brains in a collective group. Neurodivergent refers to one person, so a person is neurodivergent. This visual, I'm borrowing it from the very lovely Sunny Jane, a lived experience educator, and they developed this visual just to show that being neurodivergent is a big umbrella term that actually encompasses a lot, as you can see under there. So it's not just autism, but when we talk through this webinar, we mostly referring to autism just because that's our area of interest and work and what we mostly do. But it's just good to acknowledge that that actually goes to a lot of different types of brains. And also that it's important that we understand these terms and talk to the person themselves to find out what language they would like to use and how they'd like to refer to themselves, because everyone's different and it's really powerful what language that we use. We've heard from the autistic community that a lot of people prefer person first language, like autistic person. I am autistic, but everyone's different. So it's always good just to understand someone's preferences. And I think using these appropriate labels also means that we can take away misunderstanding or harmful labels that may be used instead. A child might be wrongfully labeled as naughty or lazy or some of those other things if their actual needs and their neurotype isn't understood and identified. So I think that's a really important message that we want to have, as well as just acknowledging that there's different communication styles with autistic people. They experience things differently, they feel things differently, they might show affection or empathy differently to a neurotypical person. So we're not at all wanting to change those things about them, but just acknowledge those differences and to work with those because everyone is unique. Other little important messages we have is just that building emotional regulation is a long game. It takes a long time, but we can make positive steps towards that together. All children are developing this skill, whether they're neurodivergent or neurotypical. So for all children, it takes time as their brain develops, as they grow, as they have learning opportunities and experiences that they can reflect and build on. So we also want to look at your specific child and maybe their needs and seeing things through their experiences, strengths, challenges, and where they're at in that journey as well. So I think I'm over to Jenny now. We'll delve in a bit more.
All right. So yeah, I guess most parents would come into Chatwell Allied Health, and lots of them do have complaints about their child's behaviours, whether it's in the school setting or at home. And so I guess we're now sort of trying to educate parents as well as educating children, but looking at emotions as something that if we can understand what is underlying a behavior, what emotion is normally being felt, it kind of does explain, and then we can actually deal with that rather than disciplining. May work in the short term, but it doesn't work necessarily in the long term, and it also can be harmful to that child. So we really want to look at what is underlying a behavior. Is there an unmet need, or does this child need support in just understanding and feeling this emotion, so that they can deal with that and then move on to the next thing. So when we look at this diagram here, we're looking at a situation normally occurs, and then this interesting thing happens where we have thoughts happening in our brains, we have feelings, we have behavior may come out, and we also have a physical reaction in our body. So this is for, positive emotions, ones that we like to feel, happy, excited. And then we also have the more challenging or tricky emotions that are a little bit more uncomfortable in our bodies. So I guess this diagram is just looking at, this is complex. Emotions are not just, oh, you feel sad, you feel angry. There are things underneath that as well. And we're trying to help the child to also understand and explore that a little bit further. And then hopefully we can then find the right coping strategy, or we're meeting that need. So then hopefully those behaviors will actually, disappear and can be met. So, I guess we just in sessions with kids, I'm starting to try and help them understand that there are all these different areas that can indicate what emotion we might be feeling. We put the thoughts in because we're kind of looking at sometimes that ends up being a self-talk, and we want to look at trying to make a positive self-talk, or catch ourselves when we're having negative self-talk. So just that they all interact with each other. The arrows are pointing in all different directions. There is no nice, works in this particular way. It does all just start affecting each other. So we can understand why kids can be quite confused with what is
Yeah.
going on in their bodies
Mm.
and their minds at the same time, and why behaviours sometimes come out, because that's the easiest way to deal with them at that time for that child. This next one is the behaviour iceberg, which is borrowed from Sensational Kids. I just like this diagram. I use this in my sessions a lot because most people come in with the behaviour challenge is usually linked to anger, whether that's hitting, kicking, screaming, crying, all these things that we can see at the top with the behaviours. So that's the top of the iceberg. This is what we see. Whether we see it at home, we see it at school or childcare. And underneath is what we cannot see. So angry is one of those feelings. And I actually get kids to kind of circle what feelings are they actually feeling, and what are the outside behaviors that they may express, and then what are the internal emotional states. And yeah, quite often there will definitely be multiple words circled. So just a little tool that I use a lot in trying to unpack a little bit more, rather than just I'm feeling angry. As Charlotte did say, emotion regulation is a skill, and it's something that we build over time. So even as adults, we still struggle with emotion regulation.
Yeah.
So expecting a child to do this really early when their prefrontal cortex is still developing, we really need to, give them that chance that sometimes, they will just develop these with experiences, and as they get older and their brain develops. One of the most, important ways, and as parents, is this idea of co-regulation. So this could also be done with a teacher or somebody who is a safe person for that child. And it's looking, I guess, about creating a safe environment to express emotions. So the idea is, if a child is really struggling, is that we're really validating their experience, that I'm here with you. You're not alone. It's really scary for a child to be left alone with a big emotion. As we know as adults as well, to be left alone with something can be really scary. So to have somebody there who's with you, it's just a message that's really, really beneficial for that child, and in sort of creating a nice, secure attachment. I guess we kind of look at even, what we do to soothe the baby, is we do the rocking and the holding. We hold a baby close. So we really encourage to keep doing this with children. If they don't want physical touch, that's okay. But just sort of being that presence and being, I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna use my calm voice, and my body, my nervous system is going to try and be as calm as possible. Again, very difficult when your child is screaming, hitting, biting. And that's, I guess, what I work in my sessions with parents as well, is keeping yourself regulated so that our nervous systems then match up with our child. As soon as, and you probably notice this at home, if you escalate with a child that's escalated, it just can make it worse. Whether they, come towards you and keep hitting, or they run away. It depends on the child and the situation. But what we want is to kind of minimize that deregulation and come back together and connect, and make it a moment of connection. And that's where we can do the learning. So this next one, I guess, sort of goes into that a little bit more. Ideally, we would love kids to be able to self-regulate, and it does build their resilience, and they will learn that over time. As they become adults, they will then do more self-regulation. But I guess the first thing is we need to regulate with them. So as you can see in this diagram, it's a triangle that we're working upwards. So from the bottom is we're regulating first. This is to try and work with the child and minimize that fight, flight, freeze response. If a child is in a fight, flight, freeze response, we know that their prefrontal cortex is not working as well as it can be, and we want to kind of switch that back on. So we're regulating first. The next one is we're going to then relate to them and connect again. So they can again have that nice calm nervous system, and then we're going to do that reasoning later.
Mm.
And we're going to do that skill building, talk about what happened. And there's lots of sort of techniques that we use to help parents learn how to do these conversations with their child.
I think that's a really nice point too, because whether we're teaching the skill of self-regulation or teaching some other skill like tying your shoelaces or asking for help, that is all best achieved when a child is regulated. So not in those moments of dysregulation or a heightened state. So it's kind of applicable to lots of different things that we're probably helping our kids with.
Absolutely. Yeah, at school, how can we expect a child to sit in a classroom learning maths if they're dysregulated? It doesn't work. So we need to regulate with them first, and then wait till they've sort of reached a calm space, and then we can get back into the teaching maths or engaging in, particularly in social relationships as well. We have to kind of be in a calmer state for that. This next one, I guess, is just a few more tips, just spelled out a little bit more of the different steps of things you could do. So regulate, we're kind of looking at, doing that sort of body work, that if they're there, if they want to hug, that's what we're doing. Relating, we're probably more now talking and, I can see you're feeling this. It's okay to feel like this, and I'm here with you. And then reasoning, we're looking at, trying to, I guess, direct them, and then even later go through that scenario of what happened and what maybe we could do next time, as well. So some of the strategies I'd be using in some of my sessions as well is teaching kids how to recognize emotion and feeling and name it if possible. And we're looking at sort of trying to explain and be in touch with those body sensations of what does it feel like in my body? What are the cues? Because if I can notice a cue before it gets too explosive, then maybe I can actually, and parents and teachers can learn to intervene earlier rather than letting it get to the top of the thermometer there. So on the diagrams here, one is a thermometer that I use where kids can kind of rate where they are, where they're feeling at certain moments or with different emotions. How much am I feeling of this? It's just a nice visual way, and something if they don't want to talk, then that's a good way to kind of just be able to label it. Underneath that is the Bears cards, which are really common in sort of psychology and counselling. There's no words, they're just pictures, and it's all open to interpretation. But kids, there's many of them in this pack, and kids can kind of pick out cards as to what they're feeling and what that kind of demonstrates, and how body language and stuff can communicate certain things as well. One thing I love to do is practice with positive emotions, and I put positive as emotions. We're going to feel all of them. We don't get to choose just to feel the nice ones. But kids definitely benefit from that. Sometimes they struggle with talking about the more difficult ones. So we do the same thing of building that skill by looking at the ones that feel nice as well, because they're important. Modeling is really important. So I encourage parents to talk about their own emotions, what's happening in their body, which could be different to that child. But that's okay. It's sort of building that awareness, and that it's okay to feel this and to express it this way. This is how we're going to, this is what I try to do. Another thing is looking at characters in books or their favorite TV show or movie. They might identify with that character more and suggest, what do you think that character's feeling at this point? And breathing exercises and relaxation, mindfulness, really amazing strategies to help calm that nervous system. So I definitely will do that in some of our sessions as well.
That's right. I think relating to what Jenny just said in terms of if we need to adapt any of these strategies, because a lot of autistic children or neurodivergent children might have co-occurring things happening. So things else happening in their development. So they may have difficulties understanding language, so what is said to them, or using language, like the words, the sentences. They might have speech sound difficulties, or it may be a situational thing that in certain situations it's difficult to communicate, and definitely in a heightened state, it is very difficult to access words to communicate how you're feeling. I just move my little window here. I don't know if that'll help. So some of the things Jenny mentioned in the previous slide, I guess things that can be helpful for adapting these kind of strategies would be including a child's interests. So she mentioned like television characters, all of that. Definitely incorporate interests. It could be, relating to an analogy, like if they are into cars and engines, using that instead of a thermometer, or it could be relating to superheroes, and there's the Hulk stage and all these different ones. So I guess understand your child. If you're a parent watching, you know your child best and can incorporate their interests. It's going to be more motivating, more relatable to them. Another thing you can do when sort of Jenny mentioned talking about their internal cues and explaining how they may be feeling, that's really interpreting their body movements, their eye contact, their sounds, all of these non-speaking forms of communication, so that you can interpret all of that and be their interpreter for them to, explain what they might be wanting to say or what they might be feeling. It's good to model things from a child's perspective. If they are a child that might mimic things that are said, if you say something either from their perspective, like, I'm feeling upset, or if you say something from a collective perspective, like, we should go, if they imitate that back exactly, it then makes sense from their perspective, and that's a real usable phrase that they can use in the future. On the other side, if you're giving them information, it's really important to, we're up to kind of direct and simple here, to give like direct information. So very clear, direct and concise information of, what is going to maintain their safety or what we need to do next in that sort of heightened state. Or even when you're reflecting on things afterwards, you can still be really direct and clear and try to be linear. So like in a time order as well, about what you saw, what happened, how they may be feeling, just to make it as easy to pull that information together for them as you can. The last two are kind of on visual aids and supports. So whenever we're explaining to a child something or supporting their communication, it is actually really helpful to use your own gestures and bodies to reinforce what you're saying. So if something was really big and lots of emotions, you're showing that with your hands, or you're pointing, or showing them items, things that can really like aid their understanding and support them to express those messages. Or you might actually use visual supports, which would be physical, like paper, pictures or symbols, or maybe they have an AAC system, like a device, really utilizing those tools because they're something that they can use and refer back to, whereas spoken language is just transient, it's gone as we speak. So making sure all those things are encompassed into their daily life and these experiences too. I think, what's happening now? I think that's the end. We've kind of come to the end. I guess before we completely wrap up, we do have our details there if you wish to get in contact with us, either with some follow-up questions or if you'd like to book in a consult. But just to kind of bring it back to, I guess, what we provide at Chatwell Allied Health and how that relates to supporting development and emotional regulation. So in terms of speech pathology, we provide in-clinic or home and school visits for assessment or therapy. That can be individual supports with your child. That could be group sessions, say a social group or a special interest group. We also do things via telehealth as well if you are regional and in some interstates. So lots of different options to find a service that works for you and your child's needs. Another thing that I offer as well, we do dual autism assessments at Chatwell. So that is with a speech pathologist such as myself and with a registered psychologist. So we're able to provide that service here in a really fun and relaxed way that's good for the child and for the family. Jenny can talk about the counselling support.
Yeah, so I offer counselling either individually with children, and then I tend to also work with the family as well. So it could be working with one parent or both parents, or siblings as well. If there's sort of that relationship needs a bit of improvement, we work with that as well. Yeah, I guess just looking at co-regulation, understanding that child and their emotion regulation needs and coping strategies, but then, yeah, also working individually with children. So I offer that in clinic, at school, at home, or can do telehealth as well.
Yeah, we're very excited that we've got our big main base in Greenacres.
Yeah.
But we also have a new clinic opening in Stirling, the Adelaide
Mhm.
Hills, so servicing that area now. And we also have an existing location in Mawson Lakes too. So kind of lots of different supports for the north, northeast, and hills. So it's very exciting that we may be able to get in touch with you and your family. If you do want to explore any of those services, you're welcome to contact us, or there's lots of information on our website and you can fill in an expression of interest form. So thanks everyone. I hope you enjoyed, and bye.
Bye.